Dear family, as we listen to this reading where it already begins to talk about the resurrection, in the church's wisdom, what it reminds each of us that despite the fact that we know that there's going to be the Good Friday, is that the Good Friday is not the end of the story. The end of the story deals with the resurrection. So that's where we are. Now, a couple of main points. In the first reading, there's a sentence where God says, I am your God, you are my people. Is that familiar with you, that phrase? It only appears 47 times in the Bible, or more. But I ask you this, so there's a basic question we work with. If I were to come up and I see these young people sitting there, and I would simply ask you, where is God? What would you answer me? Is that putting you on the spot? I'm sorry, but I'm not. Tell me, where is God? Everywhere. Is that true? The trouble is, can you put your hands around everywhere? All right, let's use the opposite. Nowhere. Those are mental constructs. They're hard to get a hold of. Now, you're not wrong, but I want to improve on so that this is something you never forget. When we gather, this is where God is. I am your God, you are my people. So the place of God is with his people. And the power of that is very, very important. It means when I leave here, I leave with that presence. And by my behavior, I show that I believe in this God and that I'm willing to follow the direction that he gave. And an important direction in this particular gospel is death has a trauma to it. And there's certain things that are scary about it. But in order for people not to be scared, Jesus shows them something very special. He says to Lazarus, come out. And what's so interesting about that, you know, when we're in the seminary, we would like to put just a little happier spin on the deal, okay? We say, well, when Lazarus went up and he stood in front of Peter, you know, we say that. Peter's not there yet. He's not there yet. So who does Lazarus talk to? And what happens when he says, when whoever it is says to him, no, you got to go back now. Can't you hear Lazarus say, no, I don't want to do that? These are things that we need to think about because it puts us in touch with this reality and helps us not to be afraid, to be people who know that part of our life has to do with the fact that we live it as fully as we can, and then it comes to an end here on earth, but does not come to an end. It comes to a fuller and more appreciative life. So what the church is pointing out here, death brings us to life. Death is not the end. Are we clear about this? I didn't hear the yes, Father. You haven't practiced with me for a while, so you're a little rusty. All right. So this is important, that we understand that we go from, when we go through death, we're passing through to a new and fuller way of life. Now, the other point. The measurement that is used by holy people throughout the church is what we call the Paschal mystery. And this is something that needs to be at the tip of our tongue and our mind each and every day. And that is the life, the death, and the resurrection of Jesus. That Paschal mystery drives everything in our life. It is the story of the Scripture. All of that story, the length of it and everything, has to do with Jesus being raised from the dead. Excuse me. When we're aware of that, as we go throughout our life and we reach parts of our life that are hard, we say, I understand what this is. I may not understand the problem fully or completely, but this I know, that whatever I'm experiencing right now is going to end, and I will have life that is fuller and without tears, without hurt, without sorrow. That's why the church wants to talk to us about the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. It is that pattern and that life that is given to each one of us. And when we have that, we can go forward with a great deal of hope, with a great deal of energy, because we know that what is waiting for us is the completion, full completion of the life He has called us to be. Now, a little side note, and you've heard Father John talk about this. When we reach Sundays during Easter time or during Lent, the rule is we are free from the fasting that we've done during the week. You've heard this before, correct? So let's put it this way. If you made a little visit to Morley's, the little chocolate on the shelf, you may have a bite or two today. Don't overdo it. A bite or two of that today. Now, why do I bring that up? What the church is saying is this. Despite the fact that Good Friday is coming, we are not redoing Good Friday. It's done. We're remembering what happened and realizing how it touches us, how it affects our lives, and how it is to affect our lives today and our tomorrows. And the deep part of that is this important statement. All of which is terrible and awful is wrapped up in Good Friday. And Jesus says by the resurrection that all of which is terrible and awful, I am greater than that. Do you hear those words? I am greater than that, He's teaching us. When we have that ahead of us, of course there are times when we're going to be overwhelmed, uncomfortable. All of us reach those points in our life. But Jesus promises through the resurrection that His love for us, His care for us is larger than any of the terrible and awful that exist in the world today. Do you hear me? Oh, good, thank you. This is real important for this particular Sunday. Now, how many weeks do we have left of Lent? 2 weeks. It's going to go pretty fast. So, this is the point. However we have lived or navigated this Lenten season, today we can begin anew and have that little bite of chocolate and then begin on Monday. And you're going to begin on Monday with a smile, not a grumpy. All right? The world has enough grumps. That job has been taken. Okay, they need us out there. Need to be smiling. We got enough grumps. And you know how I know that's true? I just get in the traffic there and watch the sign language. I hadn't realized that many people knew sign language. This was somewhat of a revelation. And the thing of it is, they learned only the bad words. But when we start again on Sunday, to start renewed, remembering that statement, all the terrible and awful that ever exists or will exist, God's love is greater for that. And he says to us today, you are my people. I am your God. Do not be afraid.